Don't forget the doc. Several network participants recently called into Dr. Rick Wright's Old School Sundays radio show. Check this out.
Hey, George Kilpatrick, the king of all media. Got to clear my throat on you. Let me clear my throat. Can I clear my throat on you?
Go ahead, bro.
Wow. Need to get some of this vitamin water that Kennedy's got on the floor in the Power 106.9 studios, man. I know it's I think it's about 3 bottles back there. I think I hit one of them vitamin water deals, and I'll be ready. Well,
that
George,
energy going.
The only thing I can say, George, you are a superstar brother of mine in the Omega Sci-Fi fraternity, and you are the king of all media, especially here in Central New York, man, and God has blessed you, and thank God, George, for you and all that you do, and Happy New Year to George Kilpatrick. George, you called in to make sure I got the message, and in fact, Nick, our great WSYR newscaster, gave me the news when I walked in the door that Percy Sutton had died, and then you called, and then Donald Singletary, New York City, is going to call back about 3:30 and give us even greater details of the life and the homegoing of Mr. Percy Sutton.
Well, you know, Dr. Rick, growing up in New York City under WLIB radio and, of course, the powerhouse WBLS radio, we grew up with that, and that was all because of the vision of the Sutton family. They, of course, founded Inner City Broadcasting Company, and they were able to not only have stations in New York City, but they were the first black-owned radio station in New York City when they had WLIB. You know all this history. I'm just telling listeners in New York.
You give it to George.
We all grew up with back in the day, and it's obviously a loss. He's the pioneer. Of course, the family will continue operating Inner City Broadcasting, but certainly he was a pioneer. He was Manhattan Borough President for 12 years, and he was certainly what they call one of the Daily News had a little feature about him today, called him one of the Gang of Four, Mayor David Dinkins, Basil Patterson, which is the father of David Patterson, and of course Congressman Charlie Rangel out of New York. And they were the essence of power in Harlem, and of course he's also made history as a broadcaster, bringing news, music, and information for decades to not only New York City, but to the nation. So it's a sad loss in broadcasting, a pioneer dead at the age of 89. And I just wanted to make sure that you knew, because I know that if you must give homage, you always pay homage to those who have come before, who've been pioneers in this business. And I know that you have had a lot to say, and will have more to say about the life of Percy Sutton.
Yes, the life of Percy Sutton. In fact, Dr. Dorothy Brunson, who was the general manager of WBLS and WLIB radio back in the 1970s, and a big giant in the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, introduced me to Mr. Percy Sutton back in the 1970s. And also, guess who was at that meeting? And I met him for the first time on that day.
Who?
Carl McCall.
There you go.
Yes, indeed.
Carl McCall.
Carl McCall,
have a good Carl
man.
McCall. Carl McCall is a great guy, of course. Lieutenant Governor at one time. What a great guy he is.
Yeah, George, I was blessed, man. I was general manager of WTNJ in Trenton, New Jersey.
Lieutenant Governor, comptroller.
Yeah, comptroller. But also, he ran for lieutenant governor and also for governor, too. But anyhow, I was general manager of WTNJ in Trenton, New Jersey back in the 1970s. And I went up to New York, to visit WBLS radio to try to find out how they were doing things because, man, I was struggling, man, in Trenton, New Jersey, trying to run a radio station, man. Trenton makes and the world takes, and it took me, man, for a big ride, but I learned a lot and had a great career there in Trenton. But I went up to New York to just visit, WBLS radio and WLIB and walked in, and there was Dr. Dorothy Brunson, who was the vice president, general manager of the station. We had a beautiful meeting. Then she said, Roosevelt, come with me. You got to meet my boss. And we walked down 125th Street, man, to an office on the other side of 8th Avenue near the Hotel Teresa. And walked in the room was none other than the great Mr. Percy Sutton and the Reverend H. Carl McCall.
Go ahead.
And I'm telling you, at that time, man, I was, God works in mysterious ways, man. I knew they were incredible brothers, man. And I was talking about Reverend Adam Clayton Powell to them, and they really showed me around, and I had a great time. But some more history of my life, George, back in the 1970s in your hometown of New York City, man.
Growing up in New York, listening to Frankie Crocker and Ken Spiderweb and all of those guys, it was great. I want to leave your listeners also with one more thing, Dr. Rick. It is, of course, the second day of Kwanzaa, Habar Ghani, Kujichagulia, self-determination. So I want people to think about that as they go through this day today and what it took for somebody like Percy Sutton to have what he had, and how if you have the same determination, you can have even greater on this day.
Well, George Kilpatrick, the king of all media, as we celebrate Kwanzaa throughout the world, a incredible holiday creation, especially designed for the African-American community and also for the communities of the whole world. We thank you. We bless you. God bless you and your family, George. You are the king of all media, man.
Happy New Year to everybody. And don't panic. I'm on vacation next week, so if y'all don't see me on TV, that's why.
Okay, George Kilpatrick, but guess what? You're on Power 106.9 Old School Sunday with your fraternity brother, the Omega Sci-Fi fraternity, Dr. Rick Wright, and that's all that matters right now.
Dr. Rick, showtime, baby.
Showtime, George, showtime from the king of all media. God bless you, George, and I'll see you in the streets, or better yet, in the radio and television studios of the world. Take care, George Kilpatrick.
God bless you, Dr. Rick.
Because you are the king of all media. Love you, George. Love you, love you, love you. Showtime, George. Showtime.
All right, so get to all the Syracuse University alums throughout the world. Checking out Dr. Rick Wright, Power 106.9 Old School Sunday. On a big bad Sunday afternoon, Dr. Rick Wright live and well in Syracuse here at Power 106.9 Radio. Do it.
The network reminds you that you too may call in to Dr. Rick Wright on Sundays between 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Check in with the doc at area code 315-428-1069. Don't forget the doc.